Hello and welcome to another exciting episode of Triple Tap. Really great to be here. And I'd just like to introduce my co-hosts, Kent and Cole. How are you both and how has your week been?
I've kicked into the revolution with a 25-year-old piece of technology on my shoes.
How's your week been?
Very productive, as usual. I've never worked so hard and been paid so little.
And Kent, what about you? How's your week been?
I've been following up the BS 247 media, and I've been finding out that here in Australia they don't want to report on Jacinda Ardern and the reason, of course, why she's resigned. Of course, it was in the newspapers in New Zealand the very next day after she said, "Look, I'm just quitting to be with my family, and that's the real reason." And other people will say other things, but the Centre for High Corruption, Major Corruption in New Zealand, is thoroughly investigating her for donations from the Chinese Communist Party. And what a surprise! A politician who lies.
Who would have thought?
Anyway, who would have thought?
Yeah, let's get cracking, guys. Welcome to all of you here. Episode number 36. We've got a great show lined up for you tonight. This is my favorite time of the week. I love getting on and hosting this and actually reading out the bios of some of our speakers, because some of our speakers, we don't always know like the history of them and what they've been up to. So I always love this part. So I'm going to share with you all just a little bit of an introduction about our guest tonight before we bring him on. So I'll put my spectacles on so I can see what I'm reading here, and let's get the show on the road. This gentleman, Mr. Stephen Lymbery, for over 2.5 years, he's presented common law Zoom meetings twice a week on Wednesday and Thursday nights in the wake of the destruction of the initial common law community at the hands of Mike Holt, Trevor John Alexander, and Barry McInerney, and of course a few others, which saw the initial gathering of 160 people reduced to 22 in just 1 week. Wow. He met David Wynn Miller, the creator of the correct sentence structure communication pass syntax grammar in New Zealand around 2009. And through studying his technology, he has developed a greater consciousness of words and the relationship of words. And that always fascinates me as well. I've heard of David Wynn Miller, never really got into the syntax grammar, but I'm curious to hear what Stephen has to share with us tonight about that. And of course, words always fascinate me. He facilitated David Wynn Miller coming to Australia for the first time. And when he returned on his second visit, he traveled with David Wynn Miller and served as a gatekeeper on stage as a translator. Words are absolutely fascinating to me. I'm obviously not a wordsmith quite like you, Cole, but words are a saying that I remember from one of my mentors is you can affect people with your greatness or you can infect them with your mediocrity. There is so much more to Stephen, but basically he researches and pursues his own agenda and correctness, which requires facts for substantiation. Obviously something I know that's what you're big on as well, Cole. And for the last year, Stephen has had the privilege of interviewing Dick Yardley and presenting his research and evidence on the takeover by definition, change brought about by the treasonous political parties in their attempt to deprive the people of the enjoyment of their lives in this country. The Commonwealth of Australia Constitution Act 1901 has proclaimed and gazetted is the armour of the people, however, only if they have the ability to see. He says that nobody is coming to save us. We are our solution. I'll say that again. Nobody is coming to save us. We are our solution. And he believes Australia is a concept yet to be realized by the people. Dismantling the hijacking of a country and its people by an enemy so evil and void of morality, most normal people cannot imagine the depth of depravity our oppression lurks in, is his goal. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, please let's bring on Stephen Lymbery to the call tonight, and welcome, Stephen, welcome to the call. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Ainsley. And thank you
Excellent.
for that introduction. Don't think I could have done better myself.
You couldn't have written that better if you tried, could you?
Yeah, I could have written it a lot longer. But
Yeah. That's excellent. Well, it's always nice to hear a little bit of background about our speakers. I personally haven't met you before tonight. I did, however, get wind of you, I guess, from a video you did on your show. So let's tell us a little bit about what your show's about and what you aim to achieve on your show.
well, I've only become aware recently that it is a show. I thought it was just a Zoom meeting where we did stuff, but
Okay.
apparently it's become a show. As you can tell by my background, I've gone to a lot of trouble to get a virtual reality setting that doesn't take away from my presence. Excuse me. So the focus has altered a little. In the beginning, it was about common law.
Yeah.
But common law, it doesn't take much time to go through that. So cause no harm, loss or damage, be honest in your contracts next. So you've got to move along. But in the last year, I've been interviewing Dick Yardley, and there's other people come on board. And prior to that, we did have other people that we interviewed. But I had the opportunity to focus with Dick Yardley because his work is so factual in that the majority of it is copy and paste. So he's not sitting there giving you his opinion. And if he does give you his opinion, he's very, very clear that's his opinion. But he doesn't want his opinion to muddy the information that is being presented. So we're talking about documentation that he has found where the legislation has said one thing and then the political parties have changed it to another. And because it's all written, there is actually evidence of it, but you and I aren't looking because we're doing something else. But Dick went through a situation where he lost his property. And at the time, he was doing the majority of his research in the beginning was when you had to physically go to a library, you had to physically get a book, you had to photocopy the page. Like now we talk about cut and paste, and you use your mouse. Well, he was using scissors and Perkins paste, like doing the real thing, sort of thing. So, and he's a stickler for the facts, but he's also, unlike some other people that I've spoken to in that area, and I'm not going to put anyone down, but everyone's got different personalities. And Dick Yardley will let you speak, and he will entertain somebody who has a different opinion. And one of the things that we're endeavouring to do is to have more people come on board that disagree with what he says, with the information that he's putting forward. But we don't want just an opinion. We want people to bring their evidence. So ultimately, what we're looking at is we have a purported government, purported appearing real while false, according to the Oxford Dictionary, Oxford English Dictionary, which is what we use. And with that purported government, they're really in place because of the Constitution, but they're in breach of the Constitution, and they have modified the Constitution unlawfully. They've modified areas that can only be modified through the people, through a representative government, which we don't have, and we can talk more about that. So the weapon that no matter what we do, the Constitution is where these people get their validity from. The Constitution is the very thing that will hang them, because what they have done is they've treasonously changed it. They're seditious in their behaviour, and we have all the evidence. What we need is all the people to be more aware. Now, because we have the tool that will remove the government and will remove the judiciary, because there is no solution within a court system that's under parliamentary supremacy. Once we do that, then people can decide whether they want to have the bones of the Constitution. And when we refer to the Constitution, you have to remember to refer to it as the Commonwealth of Australia Constitution Act 1901, as proclaimed and gazetted. And the reason for that is they have created or cloned the Constitution and have their own copyright versions. So if you just say Constitution, nobody knows whether you're talking about the 1901, the 1999, the 2003, the 2010, or the 2012. And what they've done is gone through those other constitutions and they've prepared altered definitions of words. Now, that would be unheard of. Nobody here would have ever heard of anybody changing the definition of a word. Or maybe they have. Maybe
Steve,
the word vaccination.
Steve, I want to jump in for a bit here.
Thank you. I need a breath.
Yeah, that's okay, mate. That's okay. I want to jump in for a bit here. We need the people together, okay, if this is ever going to work. And I agree with you that the Constitution provides evidence of crimes that have been committed by every person who is in government, except for perhaps one or two people. There might be one or two people who haven't committed a crime who are in government. But the vast majority of them, and when I say one or two people, I don't mean a handful, I mean one, maybe two that I can think of. But they're politicians and I want to leave them out of this. The truth is the Constitution and also the Crimes Act of Australia, et cetera, our government doesn't care about that. And the only way we would ever make them care, and you know and I know that they've been committing these very same types of crimes, not just for decades, but for centuries. And they've got these ideas from past governments from well and truly over 100 years ago and hundreds of years ago as you look back into it. Now, the only thing that ever brings an out of control government back into line is when there's a couple of things. You can bring about peaceful solutions if you're clever enough and you can get enough people together, or you can get all of the people together and force them back into line that way. And let's face it, none of us want any violence, and none of us are even saying that we want violence in any way. We've got to get the people together. We've got to have all the people who are awake on the same page and together as much as we possibly can. I first came across your show when a few people, we won't mention their names, were having a crack at a brother of mine by the name of Jagamara. After a phone call with you, which I was quite happy that you took, and you were able to have a phone call with me and with one of our TAP admins, Jeff, who has now become an executive in TAP, and also with my brother Lance. We worked out that there was some, well, let's just say some serious anomalies with accusations that have been made, not by you, but by others against Jagger. And we also worked out that these types of things aren't helpful. And then I also looked at, the work that you're trying to do. And even though I suspect you and I don't agree on some things, particularly with the Constitution, and we'll get into that and have a spirited discussion, no doubt. But I'm certain that we'll stay on the same page and realise that, because I know from my conversation with you that we want the same thing. We want a country that is free, that has liberty, that has rights for men, women, and children, that we're protected. We see the terrible draconian laws that are being instituted across the states by premiers, empowering councils that Australians have said in past referendums, we've all voted to never give the authority to councils to make law. So our states went ahead and created a local government act and they gave them power. And now Anastasia Palaszczuk and other premiers are giving powers all over the place to police and to, Anastasia Palaszczuk is giving power to the CEO of every local council in Queensland to determine whether or not a pandemic exists. And obviously, that's because of their really awesome medical qualifications, of which they have none. They're office managers, for crying out loud, and quite possibly the most overpaid office managers in the world. I don't see the Constitution helping us with that. Recently, I've been through and I've read the Constitution, and I'm currently involved in going through a process where we analyse a team of us who've got together, and there are common law experts in there. There are Indigenous elders, and there are people with extensive experience in law enforcement going through it. working out and we've put the financial side of it out to a financial team to come up with a better solution. You know, I don't see the 1900, 1901, whatever you want to call it. The version I'm looking at says 1900. I don't see it having the solutions for our future. I do see it as a document that provides evidence of crimes for our current government. Why do you see it as a solution for the future of this nation, if you do?
Okay, well, first off, the proclamation was in 1900, but it doesn't come into effect until it's gazetted. And that's why we got the Commonwealth of Australia Constitution Act 1901 as proclaimed and gazetted, because that's when it becomes accurate. The main purpose of it is the copy and paste evidence of the treason of the government. And if we don't have a solution that removes that criminal corporation that's registered with the Securities Exchange Commission in New York, and their address is 1601 Massachusetts Avenue, Washington, our children don't have a future. Now, also within that, the judiciary are supposed to be the guardians of the Constitution, and they cemented their treason with the 1979 High Court of Australia Act, where they signed up under the Queen of Australia and paid themselves a handy $25,000 bonus for doing so. That was on that side of it. So
yeah, but that's just another evidence of politicians doing something wrong. And I get that the Constitution, provides evidence of crimes that are being committed by a corporation. I get that. When I get into the Constitution and read it, the Constitution as it stands there, that the 1901, and yes, the proclamation was in 1900, but that document vests all power in the Governor-General via the Queen, or from the Queen via the Governor-General. And of course, it says Queen, it means the monarch of England. It stipulates that Australia, which of course we know is not the landmass here. I mean, this is the great fraud. The landmass we're on, the actual place that is Australia is Norfolk Island and Cocos Island, etc., etc. We know that. We know that.
Just on that point, if I may, according to who?
Well, go ahead and expand. But I mean, I've read those documents that describe. No, but
this is where confusion comes into place. So let's stop on that one point instead of trying to handle a whole heap. Let's have a look at the interpretation.
Let's clarify.
Let's clarify Australia, and where do you get that information from? Do you get it from the Acts Interpretation Act 1901?
No, I simply read those documents that are historical documents and read them and saw that that's where the original company was created from. So
what documents were they?
To be fair, I don't know the name of those documents. I read those documents, and I can get those documents for you and show them to you.
Yeah, no,
I'll be happy to do that. And if we could get some clarification on them, I'm absolutely happy to do that. But many people have shown them to me, and it's so, you know. Let
me clarify it for you. It's no problem.
Well, go ahead.
So the Acts Interpretation Act 1901 is where the definitions lay. The original document, the Acts Interpretation Act 1901, was 22 pages long. It's now well over 100 pages long. So the definition, including Cocos Islands, Norfolk Island, Christmas Island as well, that was inserted in 1973. That was inserted by an unlawful, unconstitutional government that had no authority to do so. So the definition only stands for the Commonwealth of Australia that was registered with the Securities Exchange Commission in New York, and it has no relationship to the original Constitution, nor does it have any constitutional authority.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to do some more research into that one, and I'll check that out. But
I can
what
provide
you're
it
saying,
to you if you like.
Yeah, I'd love you to. That's a good idea, because as much as I can learn about that, I'd love to. But the 1900 document, 1901, says it stipulates that we're to be ruled by Admiralty law. Is that something that you want?
Where does it say that?
Okay.
It's a common law of England contract. It's in common law, and under common law, corporations cannot exist within the body of common law. And that's the other reason why it puts all these guys guilty of treason, and removes them because they're operating as a corporation, which is a creature of statute created by acts and statutes, which has no place within common law. When you say corporations have committed crimes,
I'm very
Hang on a
curious.
second.
I'm very curious why you'd say that.
Corporations cannot commit a crime. Only men and women can commit the crime.
Guys, I love these heated debates. I love these heated discussions, but just come on, let us one at a time. Go for
Ainsley,
it.
this isn't even heated. Mate, the Constitution 1900 or 1901 specifically states, and I'm going through it now, and it specifically states that Australia is to be beneath Admiralty law. It specifically states that the admirals have that authority. It also specifically states that the admirals have full military power.
Can we have a look at that? I've never seen or heard of that.
Okay, look, I'll share that with you. It's written in plain English right there inside the document, and it's not even a sneaky little reference. It's actually written right in it. So
it's a 22-page document. So
26. I worked with it. There you go.
Yep, that's good.
Yeah, it's in there. Okay, so it specifically says that. So, I mean, would you want Australia under Admiralty law?
The Constitution I've read doesn't have those words in it that you just stated, so I can't agree with you on it.
Yeah, I'm not asking you to. As a side thing, would you want Australia under Admiralty law? We'll agree to disagree about the Constitution. I mean, I've just gone through it, and I'm absolutely certain it's there. But that can stand aside for the moment. That's a difference of opinion that will turn into a fact one way or the other. But would you want Australia under Admiralty law? I certainly wouldn't want Australia under Admiralty law.
Well, Australia as such, the Commonwealth of Australia, I wouldn't want, and the Commonwealth of Australia is under the common law of England.
Right. Despite the fact that
it caters to British subjects, which is the other thing that's happened along the line where our standing has been altered unconstitutionally.
Yeah, it does. It caters for British subjects.
Yeah.
And so I wonder, does that have relevance today? I mean, do you
certainly does.
So you consider yourself a British subject?
I do, because I've read the Constitution.
So I got a question for you here then. Okay, because under the Constitution, I absolutely agree with you. Lawfully, every person who has come here and is subject to the Australian Constitution is lawfully a British subject. I agree with you on that. I agree with you on that point 100%.
I have to disagree because the Australian Constitution is the corporate government's production. We're under the Commonwealth of Australia Constitution. Yeah,
that's what I'm talking about, that Commonwealth Constitution. Under that Commonwealth Constitution, the 1901, you would suggest that we should be considered British subjects. Is that what you're saying?
I stated as a fact.
Me too. I agree with you. Utterly agree with you. Okay. So where does that put us, mate? That puts us in a belligerent occupational force here on land that doesn't belong to us.
So let's agree that it does.
No, seriously,
let's agree that it does. But what you've got is that very, very document disqualifies the people that are mandating vaccines on people, that are stopping people from going from state to state through their very own writing. So what I'm saying is we use that Constitution as our armour, and it's a shield. We turn it on its edge, it becomes a weapon if we're attacked, and it removes our oppressors. And then the people can say, what do we need that we don't already have? And I would suggest to you that under the Constitution, you still have dominion, and the Constitution cannot grant you rights. The Constitution could only remove rights. What rights has the Constitution removed from the people?
Go ahead and make your point, because the Constitution doesn't mention that we have any rights. And under international law, particularly when there's a belligerent occupation underway, which of course is what is actually happening here. This land doesn't belong to us, although of course we're here. And I believe we're quite blessed that the Australian Aboriginals, the elders particularly say, look, we can't fix this country without your guys' help, and you guys can't do it without us. And I totally agree with that as well. I would state that as an absolute fact. Not only is it a fact in law, it's also it's also, if you're going to have any conscience whatsoever, that's exactly what needs to happen. We need to join with them to create a brand new future here in this country. We're well aware from Prime Minister Curtin's statements in the 50s, in the early 50s, that the Constitution was never meant to govern the Australian Aboriginals, and they were never meant to be considered as citizens, but that the Australia under that Commonwealth Constitution, and I'll use his words, was to establish a trading outpost for the sons of Britishers. Okay, for the sons of Britishers, people from Britain. Okay, so now I feel no attachment to Britain whatsoever. I'm an Aussie true blue through and through, right? And I totally agree with you that the Constitution is evidence that that the people who are masquerading as a government for Australia are criminals. That's my honest belief. And I believe that the 1991 Constitution proves that they are. I absolutely, totally agree with you on that. Okay. The Constitution in and of itself and how our government has behaved is enough evidence to prove that they're so far out of whack that they all need to serve, well, in my opinion, full-time life in prison. However,
well, you can be lenient if you want.
Cole, feel free to jump in if you have any questions you'd also like to ask.
No, geez, there's room, is there?
There's
Steve,
room.
rock on. Okay, so what are you using to inform the politicians of their fraud, to put them on notice, Stephen?
There's no point putting them on notice.
No, you sure? Because one of the tricks we did in the teacher group was to ensure that they couldn't, sort of apply a plausible deniability. So by giving them, otherwise they might try to claim that they don't know, because it's a fairly convoluted process, is it not? Through amendments.
No, they've developed through mens rea. They've tried 44 times to get the Queen of Australia into the Constitution. 44 times, and they failed. And then they refer to the bill as an act, but it was never voted on to be an act, and it couldn't be in the Constitution. They're paying the judges, the attorney generals and whatever in pounds, and that is still in the latest copyright version of the Constitution. If they could change it to dollars, it would be in dollars, but they do not have the authority to do so. And from that point, we do not have a valid judiciary. They're paying themselves in counterfeit money along the way.
Has anyone seen evidence of that? We talk about the facts, and I love it too. I enjoy that you guys are objective. You were talking earlier about Dick Yardley, etc., and that objective reasoning and substantiating with evidence. And it's hard to get access to people's accounts. We'd love to, because there's that many frauds kicking around the movement, siphoning it for all its money. So where might one find that evidence of them being paid in pounds, aside from it being articulated?
It's in the Constitution.
Yes, but
it's in every version of the Constitution, even the cloned ones, 1999, 2003, 2010, 2012. They cannot remove it because it's an act of British Parliament. So, and it can only be changed by the people through referendum. And we can only do that through a representative government, but we don't have a representative government because we've got political parties, and these politicians, every single one of them is in breach, because what they've done is they've signed a private constitution with the Labor Party, the Liberal Party, the Greens, One Nation, and if they don't vote on party lines, they are out. So we do not have a representative government. We haven't had a referendum or valid legislation since the 2nd of February 1960, when they took control of the Governor-General.
You mentioned mens rea. So you're saying that, did you say mens rea was present or just actus reus? You're saying that they're all... Yeah, I know, the criminal intent. So you're saying that, like, even these sort of new, young liberals that they hatch out of an egg in Parliament somewhere, you're saying that, some of these greener, including the Greens Party, they're aware of it? They're smart enough? Because
look, I have to give way where needed. They're not all mindful. Some of them are just stupid.
Yeah, so there you go. So maybe not completely. So I mean, if it were to put mens rea and actus reus in the murder context, it's more manslaughter, for some of them.
Well, I don't know. Let's say that I'm driving down the road and I'm looking at some woman walking down the street, and I run over your child.
That's right.
Is
That's
your
right.
child any more dead than if I was looking and ran over them?
That's why I said manslaughter. Yeah. So in other words, they're still culpable, but
Totally.
some of them are just strongos.
Now, the other reason why is they actively refuse to take in the information. And when we do contact them and tell them, now, when I was asked before about putting them on notice, I don't need to put somebody on notice that has no authority, because that would be acknowledging them as being an authority, and they're not. All they are is like when I went to school and I was the tennis player and had asthma, and the captain of the football team used to try and force me to go down to the canteen and buy him a sausage roll. And I used to tell him to get stuffed, right? And then I'd get 4 or 5 of his goons trying to get to beat me up. And I went through this day after day after day after day, and I never bought him one. And I finally worked out how to talk, how to get around it. Because I had asthma, I could only run so far, and then I was stuffed. So there's no point doing that, right? But it's the same as what we have now. We've got absolute criminals in control.
Mm-hmm.
I know the country was stolen. I know all of that sort of stuff. I've gone through it all. What I'm interested in the Constitution is I'm not aware of any other vessel we have that already exists that disqualifies them and has them hang for what they have done. And it's not my decision. That's what treason is. So it's all well and good to produce something, an alternative, but we've already got the vehicle we need to get to the alternative. So what I'm saying is it should be up to the population of the country that we've already got a contract sitting there that the politicians believe is their authority, but we've got the evidence where they've gone through and changed it. They've introduced a Queen of Australia under E.G. Whitlam, who was the first Queen of Australia. And then in 1977, you've got Elizabeth II, Her Most Excellent Majesty, Queen Elizabeth II of the United Kingdom, Northern Ireland, her other realms and territories, Defender of the Faith, bringing in a coat of arms for Queensland. So, excuse me, somebody's either bipolar or schizophrenic who doesn't know who they are. So we've all got the armorial bearings for Western Australia, the same deal, the full title consistent with the 1950 Royal Style and Titles. So we've got all this evidence, and even in the Australia Act, Request Act 1985 for each state, and the Australia Act 1986, the full title for the Queen is there. Queen of Australia goes out the window. Now, with Queen of Australia, they also made no allowance for heirs and successors, because a fiction doesn't have heirs and successors. So this is a manufactured problem. Now, initially, when you go back, I mentioned the Governor-General. So for a Governor-General to be put in place, it's under letters patent. And the letters patent stipulate the correct enacting manner and form. And the correct enacting manner and form is signed manual, which is a written signature, and an impression from the signet ring, or the symbol of the signet, right? Now, what the politicians did was they put the Great Seal of the Commonwealth of Australia over the top of the signet and took possession. Now, Gough Whitlam in 1972, when he was questioned about the Governor-General, he said the Governor-General must take his advice from his Prime Minister and nobody else, unquestionably from his Prime Minister and nobody else. Does that mean Gough Whitlam told the Governor-General to sack him?
Well, would
Does
say,
you know what I mean? See, I think that was our own little Watergate thing. It's like, oh, look over here, look at what's going on. And in the meantime, they're changing the definition of this land into a private corporation, slipping that all through while we're going, oh, what's happening to Gough and what's doing it? And they bring in the Land Acquisition Act, and they changed all these other acts.
Stephen,
I'd like to ask a question. I'd like to ask a question this time from one of our listeners. So who owns the land? The Indigenous elders that they've met consider themselves custodians, not owners. So who are the owners of the land?
Nobody owns the land. And I agree with the custodians. I speak with Aboriginal elders in Northern Territory who tell me that Queen Victoria was a saviour for all, because they said it wasn't, and as she says, it wasn't just us blackfellas that were being taken advantage of. She said it depended what level of the socio-economic world you were in, and white people from all different countries were being decimated just like the blackfellas were. But when that constitution came in, it put everything on an even keel. But unfortunately, the high cost of freedom isn't free. And when the people were distracted, misled, and they trust, the biggest problem that the people in this country have, generally speaking, is they are more moral than the people who are in control, and they trust. And if that's the worst thing you've ever done, you're not going to be in the bad books as far as I'm concerned. But these evil demons took over, and they're doing what they do, and they literally feed on children. And where I've been today, and the people that I've met today around the Vax bus, and then met people I never expected to meet who've been involved in recovering children from pedophiles. And when you're looking at the politicians that are involved with that sort of thing along the way, we are in a whole world of hurt. We definitely need a weapon that the people morally can stand with. And that is that Constitution, because these guys are in breach of it. Once we get rid of them, then we can look at an alternative that doesn't involve a British East India Trading Company or any of that sort of rubbish. I agree with all of that, but I've got something here that the words on paper prove the case. I don't have to prove the case; it's already proven. It's already there.
I agree with you.
Can't do it in court.
I agree with you. The case is clear. The Constitution provides that, and it is a weapon. I also agree with you. No one owns the land. God owns the land. We've been given dominion over the land. Okay. And I speak about that using the Bible as a law book, which I've been able to explain to several people that the Bible is a fantastic law book, and it's where most of our laws come from. So the simple fact is, I agree with you on all of those points. What I disagree with at this point in time, and I think it's logical, and I think we should have a little bit of a discussion about it, is we need to make sure we put the horse before the cart, and some actions need to be carried out at the same time. First of all, we understand that first in time is best in law. That's all there is to it. That's an indisputable, lawful fact. Our First Nations Australian Aboriginals were here. This definitely was their land. They've never ceded it. And I can go through all of those things. We know that they are the true sovereigns of this country. That's all there is to it.
They weren't the first ones here.
You can say that all you want, but they've got the evidence and we don't. So that's it.
No, we do have the evidence.
Yeah, okay. All right.
And we have the anthropological evidence of that.
So what are you talking about there? Right, hang on. Before you go on there, I'm gonna make this point. As far as I'm concerned, and you're welcome to educate me with what you're going to bring up next, but as far as I'm concerned, the Australian Aboriginals are the sovereigns of this land, and I dispute that we have any evidence that proves otherwise. However, I want to hear what you've got to say, because I haven't heard that yet.
Before you tell us,
Yeah.
Stephen, I just want to, obviously, I'm watching the chat as well, and I'd like to just interject with a few comments that some of our listeners are interjecting with. This is great discussions, guys, and it enlightens all of us. International law will not let you remove the government until you have an effective government. Agree or disagree?
Correct. 100%. I agree with that. And the simple fact is, to get the horse before the cart, we can't just go ahead and sweep this government out of the way and then decide that we're going to have another one. We need a system ready to step into that overtakes it straight away. And that's how we do it peacefully. So
I disagree.
that's how we do it. Hang on. And that's how we do it without causing a lot of suffering to people. This has to be done intelligently. We need to build a different system that's outside of their power and their control, which is exactly what our First Nation Australian Aboriginal governments are doing. That's exactly what they're doing. They are following all the rules to create a nation on paperwork. And let me explain this. Creating that nation on paperwork and their government is like one of the songs that they sang as a tribe to another tribe. The way they communicated between tribes was through story and through songs and through their artwork, etc. And creating this leg of government that has the Aboriginal nations recognised as nations, and they're able to trade internationally and follow all the rules, the international law for countries trading with other countries. And we see the great work that's been done by the Yidinji, and we see the great work happening in the Githibal-Ngurakbal. And we see that work preparing to roll out across the country. This will provide stable government for us to slip straight into and assist with the removal of these corrupt entities purporting to be government. And that work needs to be carried out at exactly the same time as we prepare to use the Constitution. And I utterly agree with you, Steve, that probably the worst thing that people here on this continent are guilty of, the worst thing they're probably guilty of, is that they're busy getting on with their own lives and they're not used to telling our government what to do. They're not used to communicating with each other. And so often I hear, oh, it's just the government, you can't do anything about that. It's just the government, you can't do anything about that. But these governments, these people purporting to be government, mate, they're committing crimes left, right and centre, and they are preparing to utterly destroy and decimate and bring this population under the heel like it's never, ever experienced before. I mean, look at smart cities. I don't know the whole acronym. Maybe someone can help me out. But it's SMART is surveillance, monitoring, alert. I forget what the R stands for. And T is for technology.
Self-monitoring, automatic reporting technology.
Right. Okay. Self-monitoring, automatic reporting technology. They want us to live in these 15-kilometre cities. No more, hey, sweetheart, this weekend, 15 minutes, yeah. 15 minutes, no more, sweetheart, let's go to Texas and enjoy the pub at Texas for the weekend and see the countryside. No, none of that stuff.
Okay, so when you mentioned international law before. So with all the smart cities and all the rest of it, is that an Australian invention? No,
it's not. And it most definitely has come from, it's recorded in the UN. It's definitely a World Economic Forum thing. It's definitely part of international law. And yes, you and I know there's good and bad in everything, right? Okay.
So I disagree again.
Okay.
Right. When it comes to international law, I've seen no evidence of anything good. I've seen no evidence through the United Nations of anything good. I've seen no evidence that the World Economic Forum should be anything other than a bunch of drunken, highfalutin businessmen. I didn't vote for them. I agree with you on that. Voted for them. They're in there. These plans have been in writing for so long, and the last thing that a sovereign needs to do is go to a fiction to be confirmed as a fact.
But that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying they're going to a fiction to be confirmed as a fact. What I'm saying is that they are using the tools that are available to them to create a really good system of governance. And they're not going to anyone else to be verified. They're not trying to create a fact out of a fiction. They are using their intelligence and what they can see from around the place to turn themselves into, to have the ability to administer their own lands and turn themselves into a government. And that is them standing up. And I applaud them and I'm proud to be associated with that. And I know that it will help us towards freedom in this country.
Well, it will, and we're working with people to the same goal. We're working with,
absolutely.
We're to the same goal.
International law, international law is for trade and war, and we are at war.
International law is run by a satanic cabal. And I will not, in my own mind, I cannot resolve to acknowledge them as a lawful authority. They are as responsible for what we're going through as anybody. This is a world condition. We have got parasites operating this world, and we look to them as being an authority, and we say, please, 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 let me do this, let me do that, or acknowledge me doing it. Once you acknowledge something as an authority, you give it the authority. There is nobody has a superior right to exist than any of us. And
so let's talk about the way forward.
Yeah,
let's talk about the way forward then. Okay,
because let's have a look at what's got to happen to the government and how do you remove them.
Well, come on then. You said that this constitution.
I've got the tool.
Let's hear from Stephen. Let's hear from Stephen. Stephen, go ahead. We'd love to hear what you've got to say on that topic.
Well, I'm talking about is the first thing is that people have to stop complying with evil. But if I do it on my own, I get knocked over. If you do it on your own, you get knocked over. So we need our groups of people, and sometimes that involves communities coming together, and we can only make a change where we live. So we need to be looking at the councils in the area and our local courthouses. Now they're sitting there, and under their written laws, they're in breach of their own seals. So these people are supposed to be doing 25 years hard labour because they've been putting out judgments to people with fraudulent functionary seals. So you've got the kangaroo and the emu, supposed to be the lion and the unicorn. They're in breach of their own laws, their own legislation, and they wrote the penalties. So when you've got the 1914 Crimes Act, the 1995 Crimes Act, even though the 1995 Crimes Act is invalid, let them tell us it's invalid because they're the ones who made it invalid. So anything after 1960, as I say, is invalid. But we've got their writing that condemns them for what they have done. They
Steve,
wrote the rules, they breached them.
We
Yes.
agree with you, and we know that. The way forward, you started to mention it, that people have to come together, and we've got to start with the councils. Let's talk about these things. Let's talk about those things, because we know exactly what you're saying, and we agree. We're on the same page as you as far as that's concerned. Okay, so the way forwards, we got to get communities together. Okay, we need to not be obedient to what these criminals are telling us to do. What's your structure and your idea for that? I mean, TAP's got a structure and an idea for that, and it's coming together. And we'll be dealing with the councils. We've got some very solid plans that are moving ahead with that. But and I'd love to discuss those with you at some time. We're interviewing you. What is your plan to get the people together?
Well, I'm a labourer. And my plan was to educate people with the information that Dick Yardley brought through, because initially I didn't want to know about the Constitution. So I went to prove all of that wrong. And all I found was all the evidence why it wasn't wrong. And it's the ideal tool. But then we've got to educate people, because the problem we have around us is we've got a lot of people who are uneducated. We've got to find, and it's not their fault. I'm not meaning to be,
No, of course not.
Not being derogatory or anything at all. But we've got to find people's hot buttons, because there's so many people aren't interested. Like you said, you've got people who go, oh, it's the government, you can't do anything about it. Well, but you're losing your housemate, right? When we got the things that are coming in, when your house isn't green enough, and then you can't afford to put the green stuff on your house, so the council does it, then they put a mortgage on your house and you can't make the payment, so they take your house, all that sort of stuff. So we've got to find the hot buttons for that. And the Constitution is a way of providing evidence to people of where things have been outside and how they've been sold out by political parties in particular. So we can hold these members to account, which gives the people the morality, the moral standing to stand in defiance, because most people just want to be good and they don't want to have trouble, but they don't want to be a rebel. They don't want to be a bloody sovereign citizen or any of that sort of stuff. And then we go to the councils with our evidence of what's wrong and we hold them to account. And we've got one woman in particular who's becoming a little bit of a legend. Her name is Colette, and she's been going to the council and holding the council to account and the CEO to account, where the CEO has actually admitted that he knows he can do what he can do because the law about treason has been removed. But more fool him, because it hasn't been lawfully removed, and he's just acknowledged that what he is doing is a treasonous offence.
I'm just going to ask
Look,
a question here on behalf of our listeners. I got to interject because, guys, I got to get my word in. Will sending an email to Albanese stating withdrawal of consent to speak on our behalf achieve anything? What's your take on that? One of our listeners.
He has no authority under the Constitution. It's the same as when people are putting petitions out to an unlawful government that has no right. And they're not going to do it. They don't care. Like these people, and I've said this before, and I don't mean to be offensive, but these people literally eat children. People got to wake up. We have got excessive evil in control, and it's across the whole world. Yeah. Australia does not exist in isolation. So when we talk about international law, this whole law system, anybody who's ever read any legislation, you have got to be kidding. We're supposed to have law that you and I can read. And we go, that's what that means. But most people, you put legislation in front of them, they got no idea because it's written in such a way that it's disinformation. And dis is the demon god of the underworld for mischief and trickery, synonymous with Pluto, and that's how they write it.
And you better make sure that when you read any of those, you've got your legal dictionary. I don't know if you can see that. You've got to have your legal dictionary with you when you read some of that gobbledygook. Yeah, absolutely, Apollo. It is gobbledygook.
And which legal dictionary?
Well, at the moment, the one I've got is a LexisNexis Concise Australian Legal Dictionary.
Oh, very good. Very good. That's the best bit of garbage you can have. So, because you're in this jurisdiction,
Or a black swan. Yeah, or
no, Black's law is of no. If you don't give credibility to a foreign authority that has none until you give it to it, and this is one of the things people don't realise. All the people that are looking to go and access their birth certificate, isn't that a fraud? All of that, but now that you've got access to it, if you ever would, it's not a fraud. So there's all these things that they're a distraction. Things are put out. I believe that the PMAs are a full-on distraction. We have always had articles of association. If you've joined a club or a particular group, there's always been rules, some sort of a thing that you sign, I'll abide by the rules. That's what it is. But when people think they can have a PMA and now I've got this thing and because I don't have a contract with you, I can't breathe your chemtrails, I'm not drinking fluoride, that's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. And I know that I'll lose a lot of friends for that, but I don't care because there's no logic to it. These people, they're evil. They rely on you being divided. The PMAs will divide. We already have relationships with each other. We can have an agreement to it and we don't have to provide a new acronym for it. But if anybody thinks that you can have your own PMA and you can go over the hill and the authorities will leave you alone because you went over the hill, you're delusional, absolutely delusional. They can take you out without ever being anywhere near you. You can get rods of God from the sky, whatever you want. So we have to take control of this world. We're at a change of an eon, right? A change in time. This is a dawning of a new age. We either perish on this rock or we bring about the future that we want for our children and grandchildren where they are not the prey of satanic ritual abusing predators. That's what I roughly think.
Kyle, have you got anything you want to add to that?
Well, I hear you get into court, mate, on behalf of others sometimes. Is this true?
I beg your pardon?
I've heard that you've got into court on behalf of others before. You've gone in there and sort of represented someone or,
I've helped them, but when they've been in an unfortunate situation, they couldn't get anyone better. When it comes to court procedure, I am definitely not an authority. The last woman that I went to court to help, reported 60 pedophiles, 15 missing children, and 3 girls under the age of 12 that had babies. And those babies were purchased. They called dollar drop babies and they disappeared. Now, she made a report to the police and for her trouble, 3 days later, she answered a knock at the door. She was punched in the face, knocked unconscious, and she was raped by 4 men.
Is this up around Grafton or Lismore there? Was that?
Up north, yeah, up north. So she thought she'd been raped by 2 men because she'd been unconscious. But when we read the doctor's report, which I have read, she was raped by 4 men. Now, she gained consciousness and heard one of the fellas say he was going out to his car to get his gun. And she left the house and she knocked on 5 doors before she got to anyone that would let her in. And she's running bleeding, bruised down the road naked and nobody would help her. So she rang 000 and reported it. So when I went to help her, it's because she was facing 24 years in jail, then 26 years in jail, then 31 years in jail for knowingly making a false accusation that the nephew of a judge had raped her, for knowingly making a false accusation that a police informant had raped her, and she didn't know about the other 2. So I went and stood with her because lawyers, the legal side, had taken $120,000 off her. They'd taken a lien over their property and they didn't submit one piece of paper and they just melted into the night. And these people had no resources. Now, amongst all of this, I know a woman who's in the witness protection program and has been for over 30 years. And she was the one woman that could have helped this woman, but a fellow by the name of Peter Connor and Joe Gavin, who are absolute low-life pieces of garbage. Peter Connor, I don't know exactly what he is, but I believe he must work in conjunction with the police. He's a pedophile protector. He came down from Queensland to an area just north of where I am and interjected himself into the life of the woman that could help. Then what he did was he told the woman that made the report that the other woman would only help if she could sleep with her husband, which was a total lie, and he kept them apart. So she could have actually helped her. All I did when I went to Parramatta first, and when she went to Parramatta, the judge that she's in front of, when her father went through the Woods Royal Commission because he'd been abused by Bob Hawke, that judge was a barrister that was cross-examining her father, right, during the Woods Royal Commission, and accused him of excuse me, but I'm just reporting, and accused him of enjoying sucking Bob Hawke's cock, right? And she's got to stand in front of him as a judge, and she went into him. Now, she weighed all of 45 kilograms. She's epileptic. She's got post-traumatic stress disorder. And I was there to protect her and make sure she wouldn't fall over. I'm not her legal counsel. I'm just not the family. I'm there. I got the husband and the children to leave. And then I sort of got control of her because I was worried that he was going to call the coppers on her. But he recused himself from wanting to have anything to do with what we were doing, anything to do with her. And it got moved to the Downing Centre. And we went to the Downing Centre. Now, there's a lot of stuff happened in there, but I got invited into the well of the court to make sure she didn't fall over because I befriended a sheriff. And I said to the sheriff, I said, mate, she's going to fall down. She needs me. I'm here to support her. I got permission to go into the well of the court. Now, they didn't even know my name at that point. And when they asked my name, he just said, oh, God, not another one, because I wasn't going to give them jurisdiction. Now, while we were in there, one of the plainclothes detectives that is a child abuser and is a pedophile, he was in the back of the courtroom, and she knew that he'd thrown a 6-year-old girl through the front window of a house, a closed window, right, plate glass window. And when she went to go out, she went up to him, she was putting her finger in his face, telling him what he was. And I saw all the coppers start to move, and I went up and I wrapped my arms around her and I grabbed her. I said, you're all right, Deb, they can't hurt you, they can't get you. And I looked at them and I said, and you can't, she's of no risk to you. Right now, the next day, when we had to go back, now she also basically suffered a stroke, but I can see the time, we're running out of time.
Yeah.
So the next day, they wanted us to empanel a jury, and they wanted to take us to the 4th basement level of the Downing Centre. And there was a fellow there that was helping me, because he has far greater knowledge than I have. And I was so glad that he was there. But when they said 4th level of the basement level of the Downing Centre, we looked at each other and went, that ain't happening. And then because I'd befriended the sheriff, I said, look, she needs air. She needs air. Can we get permission for her to go outside? He got permission. They got outside. As soon as they got outside, I sent them a text message which said, run. So I helped, but I'm there because nobody that was qualified who could help would go. So I went to be a support. And when I look at the pain that they went through, the strength of the children, the whole lot of it, and it rips your heart out. And when you're in there amongst it all, and they're the people that are ruling over you, we've got a constitution that removes all of them, and they should suffer the penalties that they prescribe for treason. And they're in breach, and they just think you can't do anything about it because we've got control of the world. This is a world event, that when New Zealand and Australia fall, the rest of the world falls. The sun first strikes in New Zealand and travels around the world. We've got a big job to do.
Yeah,
I want a chance to recap here, Ainsley.
Yep, I will. We're just
Ainsley,
running out of. I will, Kent. We're just running out of time. Yep. But give you guys one last moment to have any final comments, please.
Yeah, all I want to do is recap. Steve, I want to say it's been a total pleasure to have you here and talk with you. You're a fighter. You're gutsy. I agree with so much of what you say. I think we're on exactly the same page. Let's recap. Australia is in a world of trouble. There are dangers that are here, not coming. There are dangers that are here for us right now. Look at the legislation, people. Look at the legislation that the government in your area is bringing in. Take the time out to read it. You will see that it is disgustingly un-Australian. It violates our rights as men and women and children. And we've got to fight this. I agree with you. We either win here or it's gone forever. The thing is, we all have to get together. The Constitution is a fantastic weapon and a great piece of evidence. We've got to form a brand new system of government for this nation. We have to do it with our Australian Aboriginal elders. We must right the wrongs that were done in the past, and we've got to join together as one people to bring this country into a prosperous future. I can't wait to get on the phone to you either tomorrow or the next day. Steve, I'd love to talk with you. There is a ton of work to do. Australia, it's time to get off your ass and start working.
Yeah, excellent. Cole, do you have any last comments before we go?
Yeah.
We'll finish up with Stephen after you.
Steve, I'd love also to get in contact with you again, because I'm trying to get these support crowds along to these cases and to watch and observe and be historical witness, put extra pressure on these mongrels that want to make these bad decisions. So I'm trying to compile a calendar as per state and territory that will get support crowds along from any group. Doesn't matter. I mean, it's starting because I'm TAP, but it's for everyone in any city or town to get along and watch and learn at the same time, that we're informing the process and we can help our brothers and sisters into state and territory as we move forward. So if you've got any up and coming dates, I'm sure there's a lot of people that would love to learn from what you do, mate.
Well, they would also love to learn from the people I learn from, and one of them's in the group. You see Ramona's there, and she makes sure you get witnesses in. And if I'm going to court, I talk to her, I talk to other people, because I haven't misbehaved nearly as much as all these other people, so I don't have the experience in court, you see. So I'm not the one to refer to that way. So I sort of feel for the people that have had me help them that they didn't have something better available.
It's not just you, though. It's the significance of the event as well. So
yeah, it is. And when there's witnesses there, it makes a physical difference to them. And I've seen that in a case where we actually had a busload. We had 47 people for a trial that definitely, under no circumstances, was it going to not go to trial, and it didn't go to trial. It was because we were there. Now,
we got to go, guys.
All right, guys, we
have a reciprocal.
I'm wrapping it up. We have to go. Stephen, some people have said they would love to have you back on the call. If you would love to come back on, we'll get in contact with you. I'm sure we can have some more enlightening discussions. Guys, if you've enjoyed tonight's show, give us a thumbs up in the chat there, because it certainly has been lively and keeping these fellas on track. What a hard job it's been for me tonight. But it's certainly been lively and exciting, and definitely we'd love to have you back, Stephen. So thank you, Kent. Thank you, Cole, for joining us. Stephen, absolute pleasure having on your board, and everybody who's joined us tonight, we thank you very much, and we'll see you next time on Triple Tap. Bye for now.
Thank you, and everyone's welcome to the Zoom meeting. Kent, we've got a reciprocal arrangement there, so thank you very much for your time.
Excellent. Bye for now, guys.